he's not necessarily saying here that I'm Team Jesus now. He's just saying, wait a second, this is the same thing in a different form. Religion and science is the same thing in a different form. And he even said earlier, what if God is just the universe? I think what he's basically saying, which I fucking agree wholeheartedly, because I use the words God and universe interchangeably all the time because I pray and I don't know what the fuck I'm praying to because I'm not a Catholic. I'm not a Christian. So I never know what I'm praying to. So sometimes in my prayers, I'll be like, hey, God or the universe, whatever the fuck you are. I think that these religious and scientific words are just, at the end of the day, they're all just words and concepts for that which we don't completely understand. And that's why you have so many different interpretations of this religion, that religion. No, I don't think anyone could possibly get it right. Okay, guys, you're listening to the Pranzata Podcast. We're going to jump right into it today. No intro. I will first say that I have my dear friend Shannen here today. We are going to be reacting to some current event clips. The first one we're going to be going over is something related to the Colorado attack that I thought Shannen would know everything about because he's usually on point about things. But apparently you were just as out of the loop about
I took
current
a break
events.
for the last 2 weeks. It's been so fucking nice.
I usually go to Shannen for current event things, but apparently he's out of the loop too. So this is going to be a raw reaction for both of us. We're going to see what's going on with these Colorado attacks. I don't even know what the details are. So here we go. Before we start this clip, guys, we were struggling to figure out which news source to look at this clip from. And you had mentioned this one was there any particular reason? What is this one called? Breaking Point?
Oh, yeah, Breaking Points. It was called like, what was it before that? It was, what was it? Oh, no, they just changed a couple of things with it. Breaking Points is always the name. Yeah. I just preferred it because Crystal Ball, she's a liberal by trade. She's worked all sorts of stuff within DC, White House, alongside politicians and shit. And then Sagar Enjeti is a Republican. And when you have two people, and he also the same thing, they both were just raised in that environment. But the one thing they did do well is not get too close like so many of these other journalists and people do, where they just want to be friends and close to power. But they hold each of their sides to account, and they'll criticize each other on the show in debate, which I like, as opposed to regular news where you watch everyone circle jerk.
I actually didn't know that about Breaking Point. That's good to know. I'm going to probably start watching that more often. Because, I didn't even know they had news channels where you had a Republican and a liberal together.
It took them a while to break through. It was during COVID when I had started watching them, actually. The reason the show was fucking dope, when it had first started, they were supported entirely by the member donations or whatever else. So it was just supported that way, which is really awesome. And there would be parts that you would have to be a member or whatever to get. But for the most part, you got basically the entire show, which was dope. I was like, oh, this is nice. And it didn't feel sticky and just fucking corrupt like all the other shit you watch. Yeah.
And not to mention this Colorado attack, like I said, I don't know anything about it. I'm going to be learning it right now. From what I hear, though, it is politically charged. So it's good that we're listening to something like this where we hear a little bit of each person's side, because we'll find out in a second. But for some reason, the Colorado attack is very politically charged. So let's see what this is about.
Before we get to any of that, though, we are tracking developments out of Boulder, Colorado. We can put this tear sheet up on the screen. There was an attack that's being described as a terror attack. 8 people injured, set on fire, actually, in Boulder, Colorado. And they say after man allegedly targets rally for Israeli hostages. So this is a group of protesters who's been gathering, my understanding is on a weekly basis, calling for the release and the return of Israeli hostages. And they have a suspect in custody already, 45-year-old man identified as Mohammed Sabri Solomon, alleged to have thrown device into a group of people who had assembled in this pedestrianized zone for a peaceful protest for Israeli hostages. And like I said, 8 people injured. I believe 2 had to be airlifted to a special burn unit, so that was kind of the nature of their injuries. He seemed, frankly, quite unwell, but was sort of ranting and raving, saying free Palestine. And of course, this comes on the heels of that horrific attack here in DC as well, in which the 2 Israeli embassy staffers were murdered by someone else who also said free Palestine. So this is certainly going to heightened interest in what is going on here.
Yeah, and local news is reporting that one of the victims actually was a Holocaust survivor. Mostly
elderly woman, right?
Yeah, elderly woman. I think almost everybody who was being burned. So you can see in the videos of the suspect, he's walking around with Molotov cocktails and his shirt off. So if you look up the videos, be careful looking up the videos. They're pretty rough. But if you look up the videos, people were burning. It's a really awful scene. The Boulder terror suspect is an Egyptian national in the U.S. illegally as a visa overstay who entered the U.S. during the Biden administration. Bill says, I'm told he arrived at LAX in August of 2022 on a B1, B2 non-immigrant visa with an authorized stay through 2023, but he overstayed and never left. He filed some sort of claim with USCIS, potentially an asylum claim, back in 2022, but in 2023, under the Biden USCIS gave him work authorization.
Okay, so going over that, now I can see why it's politically charged. There's different layers there. There's one, the fact that it's related to Israel, Palestine, and then secondly, the fact that it's an illegal immigrant. So obviously that's going to stir up a lot of commotion amongst the American citizens. So anything come up for you? I know you're like much more engaged with current events than I am. So I'm going to ask you first, like anything come up for you there, listening to that clip?
Oh yeah, just the common sense of why. Yeah, that is politically charged for so many reasons. Yeah, so clearly that clash between Israel and Palestine.
Yeah.
And then also years ago, back when everyone would gaslight you for not being thankful that we're letting millions of people in the country unvetted.
Yeah.
And then what do you get? It's not to say that millions of people are also, every single individual in those millions is a fucking terrorist or whatever else.
Yeah.
It's like, but statistically you're gonna have some bad eggs coming through there.
Yeah.
Especially for the people whose countries we routinely fuck. That's common sense, and it doesn't take a rocket scientist or an expert or the person on the news who lectures you because they went to some overpriced school. It's common fucking sense. So I mean, I see this, and I think everybody listening to is probably just as fatigued.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, Colorado attack. Okay. I really don't know what to say.
Yeah.
This doesn't shock me in the least. Genuinely, it doesn't shock me at all. That's basically how I feel.
I think I heard something. I saw another clip because, like I said, I wasn't paying too close attention to it. But I saw Trump posting something about how he was going to deport the man and his entire family. How do you feel about his family being deported in association with this?
Are they here legally? That'd be my first question.
Yeah.
So according to that, assuming that they're correct with their information, he was expired on his visa, which is also an issue here. They don't take that seriously. And I mean, that is a lot of resources to go hunt people down and be like, you're 5 weeks past.
Yeah.
So I'm not an idiot, but good God, I don't know what you like. The family one's touchy. You know what? My gut reflexively, if for several years they just started going hard as fuck and we're like, if you are here, you're the head of the family or whatever it is, and you fuck up and do some shit like that, all of you fucking go.
I
probably
that
sound terrible, so be it. Judge me, but this leniency that we've done over the past decade, that has done no one favors, including the people who come here, including them, not just Americans, but the people who come here. Everybody's upset and mad at each other and pointing fingers. It doesn't help.
I was wondering that too, if by extending the deportation to his family, it goes, and I'm not judging it if it's right or wrong, just like purely observational. I'm wondering if it goes beyond just safety of the American people into the territory of, this is a demonstration of power. If you come here and fuck with us, your whole family's fucked too. I'm wondering if there's a lot of that going on as well, as opposed to just cut and dry, let's keep things safe,
Yeah.
Probably both, I would imagine.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that from like how dare he do that? I'm just observational. I'm wondering if that's what's going on too.
Yeah. And you know what? I do wonder what the legal processes are for that. Like if they're not here as actual citizens, the rest of his family, if they haven't been made like through that process, I wonder if perhaps it is entirely legal for them to be like, nope, all of you go. Like a job where you like, just for example, like a job where it's a fire at will, termination at will. I wonder if it works that way. Because honestly, if it does, and if you're not an officially a citizen after going through the process, I mean, like, what do we do? What else do we do?
Yeah.
I mean, put the foot down and put the foot down fucking hard for long enough where people get that idea that you can just fuck around here out of it. There's other countries where no one gets upset. You go to Japan. Japan's very Japan with lots of Japanese people. You can't just go buy up a bunch of property and do all this shit like you can here, come in illegally and say, no, it's my right to go cross your... They'll fuck you up. There, Dubai. Like what...
I've always been very curious how Europe does things, because I know a lot of people from the United States, they always use Europe as a model for how we should do things. Like, for example, healthcare. People will be like, and I know so many people who do this, like friends, family, they'll be like, Europe has it figured out. Why the fuck can't we have it figured out? They'll be like, Europe has universal healthcare. And I always wondered, well, what does Europe do? If we're using Europe as this grand model of success, what does Europe do for immigration? I mean, Europe, every country's different, obviously, but in general, like some of the countries, I would say, I think it's Norway or Denmark might be one of the most esteemed countries in Europe that people talk about where life is great and there's good healthcare and stuff. I wonder what a country like Denmark, for example, does with immigration. Are they strict about that? Do they allow flexibility with that? Are you aware of that?
Yeah, I've heard some of those arguments, and then and this isn't a thought that's original to me, but it's one that I thought was compelling. You scale up to 300 million people, like we're here, it's not the same thing. So everyone keeps doing this apples and oranges things, but when it comes to a landmass full of people, things get much different and much more complex. When you have millions of people versus Denmark, it's tiny. A lot of our states are bigger than that. Yeah. You know, it's just not the same thing. And that doesn't mean we can't take something and use it. We can't take some of the way that they run their country and use it here. But I mean, it would just be unwise to just do that immediately and be like, well, it worked for them, so we should just implement it here without thinking. Also, I don't want to model ourselves after much of what they do over there. For God's sake, Conor McGregor is running in Ireland. You know, he's running in Ireland because those motherfuckers let so many immigrants in, just flooding the place without the consent of the people. And now the most popular name is Muhammad. Are you kidding me? Like, and this trend is happening all across the UK. Yes, I live here in the US, you know, so obviously I should mind my business or whatever, but I'm just like,
no, I know what you're saying though. You should mind your business, but also in terms of we should model this after them. So it makes sense to observe that, you know? Yeah.
Well, you look at citizens getting locked up in some of those those European countries, you know, and that's what happens when you don't put your foot down. You let these pussies in office who don't live where all these people are being let in. Yeah. You know, to just let all these folks in, and they're like, the gall to have somebody else coming from your country and protest in the streets. Have you seen that? It's almost comical. I'm like, this is wild. Someone, you got let into someone else's house and they protest you. Like if someone came through your door here, you know, you fed them, you kept them here a couple of nights, and then they start complaining.
You know what?
Like, this is, get the fuck
this is unrelated, but it's kind of related, sort of. When I lived in Central Jersey, there was this girl that was a mutual friend of a friend type of thing who apparently was kicked out of her house and she didn't have a place to stay. And my roommate at the time was compassionate towards her and was like, she doesn't have any food. She doesn't have any money. She's living in an abusive home. Can she stay here for a few days? And I was like, fine. When the bitch started taking my oat milk, I'm like, all right, bitch. like
that's where you draw the line. I thought you were gonna say something else. You said fucking oat milk.
The point I'm trying to make is that's pretty high class for a homeless person. Like if you're gonna come to my house, and beg for food, you're getting rice and beans. You're not getting the oat milk.
Oh, that's so fucking.
You're not. What I'm trying to say is I don't have enough of an income to pay for this homeless girl's oat milk. You're getting canned beans. You're getting canned peas. That's what you're getting. And I'm sorry if that sounds like I have no compassion, but I don't make enough money to pay for you and me. You know what I mean? So kind of unrelated, but related.
No. I mean, that's an example of it. That's an example of it.
You're over welcoming. You're taking advantage of someone else's compassion by letting you in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, it's very strange. I mean, you're marching into someone else's country where they allowed you.
Yeah.
And then you're like, this isn't, what countries are they coming from? Again, I can't even remember.
I need to retract a little bit. I'm not saying that the immigrants can't have access to oat milk.
I am. I'm saying immigrants can't have access to oat milk. No.
What I'm saying is the immigrants can have more than canned peas. This is getting really bad. The immigrants can have more than canned peas and canned beans. What I'm saying, it has nothing to do with the beans in this case. What I'm saying is, yes, you're correct. I'm saying I agree with you that they should have gratitude for the fact that they were able even to get here into another country to begin with and to not overstep any boundaries like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like, of course you want to be able to help people and be altruistic, but there's a line with that thing about putting your oxygen mask on first or your life vest on first before you go try and save somebody else. I mean, I firmly believe that. I would be very upset if my parents were just taking care of somebody else's fucking kids more than they were me. That's what there's so many analogies you could make, so I'll just shut up with that. But also they're leaving their own country and they're upset that the country they went into isn't whatever enough. Yeah. Like that's just strange to me. Like there's already a culture there. Irish people deserve to be Irish people. I don't care who you are. I'm not even Irish. Well, my name's Shannen, so that'd be cool. Maybe I'm Black Irish. But genuinely, like I don't know if is that a hard concept? It feels like it's just like the countries where there's these weak white people who just want to be loved and want to be seen as moral, and it's
it is a double standard, because if a culture of people is considered less privileged, by trying to take anything from that culture, you would be considered cultural. What's the phrase again? Cultural appropriation. But the same doesn't go for Irish culture. You know what I mean? You can't culturally appropriate the Irish culture. You can only culturally appropriate cultures that are less privileged than Irish people. Yeah. So you're right. It is a double standard in that case. But
yeah, I mean, it sucks. It's messy, but it's worth just realizing life is fucking messy. Also, it's not that country's responsibility to make your life better. It is simply not. In the same way that it's not my responsibility to make your life better. Your life is your responsibility, period. Someone helping you is, that's mercy. That's love. Yeah. That's a whole different thing. And I think you and I both really value people who do that, just taking care of your neighbor and everything. But you don't get to go demand that. Yeah. That's wild. And also, why didn't you all get together with your own people to make things better? Yes, I know that obviously there's fucking crazies in some of these countries, so it's fucking difficult. And that's the reason why they're seeking asylum in the first place. But I mean, it just goes back to, if you're going into another country and you're protesting to install Sharia law, are you kidding me? And some of these same people who are all feminists and whatever else are like, yeah, that. But I'm like, what? On
the other hand, though, like you said, seeking asylum, there are some countries where people don't take that perspective, where people say, we're going to stay here and fight together. You know what I mean? That was one of the criticisms I had about some of the left's reaction to our previous election. Now, it seems like a joke to even make this as a comparison to a country seeking asylum, because this is not any need to seek asylum. But in the United States, I remember when Trump won, there was a lot of talk about how the trans community might not be safe anymore, and people, or females, might not be safe anymore in the United States, and they wanted to flee to Canada. They wanted to seek asylum in Canada from the United States.
I know
because trans people can't use bathroom, like whatever. And I'm thinking to myself, like, that's not a dire enough situation where you can't stay in the country and fight for what you believe in. So the point I'm trying to make is, I'm sure there are some countries who don't just flee; they try to work together to come up with a solution. And I think for the most part, a lot of that was just all talk. I don't really know that many people who actually fled the country and went to Canada. I don't know if you're aware of anybody who did that.
I only know of one person. They weren't my friend personally, just a friend of a friend kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I tend to agree, where it's like, even just before the election, pre-election, when everyone was talking about if he wins, I'll go. It's like, no, you're not. What you're going to do is you're going to bitch and complain, but you're going to stay here because through and through, America, for all of its faults, is still a fucking wonderful place. And I stand by that shit. And so do they, even if they won't admit it. Otherwise, you'd have fucking left, you liars.
By the way, this is a random ass question, but I did want to touch on this. We were talking earlier about the United States versus Europe. The United States is interesting in that we have states and not countries. So it's confusing because we have some laws that are different state by state, but then some laws that are universal. I don't know a lot about American history, but why did the United States decide to go that route instead of be more like Europe, where they have different countries, different rules?
That is such a good question.
Do you know?
I'm only brushing back. Like there's that cursory understanding of it that we all get in I
mean, it's called the United
school.
States for a reason. They wanted something to be united about it, but I don't know the history of it.
Yeah, because it didn't start like the 13 colonies and everything. It didn't start like they were all just like, all right, we're the United. It's like no. It was these territories first, and then they joined the Union. And I think that's the interesting part, is that these places wanted to keep and preserve their culture generally, but also it's helpful to join forces as an alliance, and eventually we end up with these 50 states.
Yeah.
That's so interesting, because I'd love to get more detail so I could really just develop my own unique understanding of why and how that happened. But I think, it's fucking awesome, and it makes sense, because instead of complaining, you can just go to a state that represents your values.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's something a lot of us lose sight of. I did certainly, until I started studying, you know.
Are there any states in the United States that you feel would represent your values?
Texas, Florida in some ways as well. My sister lives in Florida. Awesome.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny that the places that I'm like, oh, this would represent my values, they're also the places that during COVID had a lot of fuck you energy.
Okay.
You remember when people were like, all those crazy people in Florida? I'm like, you mean the ones who just don't want to be told what to do?
Yeah.
I'm like, you know, I remember my sister lived there. I told you that story about the chick who spit in my sister's face.
No.
Oh no.
No, you did not tell me that story.
This is why I love Florida. It was during COVID. My sister had to go to work. She lives in an apartment building at the time. It's still during the masking era or whatever.
Yeah.
So she's in a rush. She's going down the elevator and she just doesn't have her mask on. That stops, and one of the ladies in the elevator, who eventually gets in, is like, "Oh no, you need to go get your mask." Mm-hmm. She's like, "I'm about to be late to work. I have to go."
Yeah.
They are going back and forth for a few, right?
Yeah.
This lady says, she's like, if you don't go put your mask on. It's like, I'm going to cough in your face, spit in your face. No, cough. I said spit. She coughed in her face. Anyway, coughs in my sister's face. My sister beat her ass in this elevator.
My God.
She beat this woman's fucking ass, okay? And then the woman's friend happens to have just come along.
Yeah.
And the woman comes along and they're about to call the cops. She didn't see that. She didn't see that. The friend didn't see that the woman coughed in my sister's face.
Yeah.
And so she's like, she wouldn't do that.
I don't even understand what the point of that is. Like, if you care so much about the people that you want everybody protected and her to wear her face mask, why the fuck would, in her eyes, trying to kill her, that's what she's saying, like, I'm gonna harm you if you don't stop fucking around here. Like, how does that help the situation at all? Like,
well, that's where I'm at. I'm like, it's just people take it way too seriously, and then it's really strange what people do when there's some kind of moral high ground or power. And I get it, it's intoxicating, but that's just wild, you know. First of all, she deserved to have her ass beaten. I stand by that. Yeah. And then that's right, that's how we got here. Florida, fuck you energy. Generally, I feel like that represents my sister and some of the other people who I know who live there. It's like, fuck you energy. Everyone hated that state all during COVID because they were doing their own thing. And hilariously, their COVID numbers were wildly low compared to other places.
I lived in Tampa, Florida briefly for a couple months, and I didn't stay there ultimately. For me, it was because at the time I was young. I was like 23, maybe 22 or 23. And there was a lot of drinking there. So I felt like Florida wasn't a healthy place for me because everybody there like had a drinking problem. Everybody there had a DUI type of thing. And because I was, 22, whatever years old, I feel like I was kind of like getting sucked into like the drinking culture. You know what I mean? I remember I worked at a restaurant there. I think it was Applebee's. I worked at an Applebee's there in Tampa. And when I was the new girl there, everybody like in the restaurant was like, she didn't get a DUI yet. We could get a ride from her. Like it was.
Oh my God.
It was just a different culture. It was like everybody there had a DUI. People would like my friends and my coworkers and stuff would take me out, and you would go out to a bar and it would be like, welcome to the club. Here's a shot of Hennessy on us. Like it was just like the drinking culture was too much for me. Jesus Christ. I guess the fuck you energy comes with its downsides as well. Is that?
Yeah. You ever been to Texas?
Austin, so I don't know if that counts. I mean, it's Texas, but I feel like I didn't get a full representation of Texas because it was just Austin.
Oh, okay. Yeah, actually, it was the same for me because when I had gone, some months ago.
Yeah.
I'd never been to Texas before that. How'd you like it?
So I feel bad for saying this, but at the time that I went there, I think it was right after COVID. When was it? I think it was right after COVID, like a year after COVID, maybe 2021. I was kind of neutral to it.
Yeah.
I heard it was a city, and I think what took me by surprise is I'm from Central Jersey, which is closer to New York City. So in my head, I thought a city meant like public transportation you can get everywhere. I didn't rent a car, so I was taking Ubers everywhere, and I'm like, wow, Austin is a lot more spread out than I thought it would be. There was a lot of barbecue and taco stuff, which was fine, but I think I'm spoiled living in growing up in Central Jersey. I'm very spoiled. Like I want my sushi, my Thai, my this, my that. I'm sure it's come farther now because it's populating. They probably have put more, different cuisines and all that in there, but I wasn't in love with it the way other people were. I don't know how you felt about it, but
I guess it's because I went after. I feel like
it might be more developed now.
Yeah, especially after Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
But I mean, honestly, for what it's worth, whatever happened, maybe it had nothing to do with him. But when I went, it was pretty awesome. You know what I really liked? It still has that fuck you energy, but everyone's on notice in that city generally because it's like we're still in Texas, so you're not gonna bring your bullshit here. Which I like that.
Sorry, I was gonna say I talked to some of the locals when I was there because I was getting Ubers. So I was talking to like a lot of different Uber drivers that live there. And a lot of them said they hated the gentrification. Well, I don't know if it would be considered gentrification, but they hated the new buildings and everything because they said Austin had a quote called "Keep Austin Weird."
Yeah.
And they felt that a lot of the new LA people coming in were making it not weird anymore. It was making it too like hipster-ish.
Which is in its own vein, like that's weird, but not the cool weird.
Yeah.
Like it's a lot of, they're right. There's like a bunch of tech pros and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
Come in and I'm like, oh God, and I haven't lived there. So what do I know? I don't know.
Yeah.
I liked it. I know I liked it. I know I liked the people I met. The comedy scene is fucking awesome.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure if I spent more time there and I understood how to get around, I would have liked it better, but I was only there for 4 days. And I just remember it not being what I expected and not disliking it, but just being neutral to it.
Yeah.
Like it was talked up so much to me that I was like, this is going to be the best thing ever. And I was kind of just like, okay, it's all right. It's okay. You know what I mean? But I'm spoiled. Like I was around New York City. So to me, I know a city to be like this massive thing. You know what I mean? Okay. So we're going to move on to the next clip, guys. So Shannen and I are both Joe Rogan fans. I've been out of the loop, but I've been seeing clips pop up on my YouTube algorithm talking about people complaining that Joe Rogan went to church. So I haven't watched any of the clips. I've just kind of seen them scrolling by. But there's one podcaster or talk show, whatever you want to call it, in particular named Kyle Kulinski that he keeps popping up in my algorithm so much. And his videos irritate me so much, but I can't stop watching them. And I think you're having the same thing right now.
Well, actually, I would see the title and then I purposely didn't watch it because I know exactly. I was like, it'll just be a more articulate version of bitching about Joe Rogan for being Joe Rogan. Yeah. So I was like, well, I'm not going to waste 10 minutes listening to what I know I'm already going to hear. Yeah. I don't know.
The thing is, I think one of the reasons I listen to him is because he actually does have some good points I like to keep my perspectives. I like to keep my mind open to different perspectives and because people have a tendency to get sucked into an algorithm and then that becomes their thought process. And I'm not immune to that. That can happen to me too. That's happened to multiple of my friends. I don't think anybody's immune to that. No matter who you are, if you're following different news sources, at some point, those ideas are going to shape you. Yeah. So I do try to listen to people that I disagree with so I can keep a more rounded perspective. And every now and then he does make some criticisms that I'm like, okay, that's really a fair point. I think the method in which he chooses to do it can be overly harsh. And I sort of suspect that he's kind of playing into it to grow in popularity. It's fucking working because I can't stop watching them. So.
That's fair. No, fair point.
A little bit of the same criticism I had for Candace Owens. I think Candace Owens is getting better, but I think she would, or Matt Walsh is another one too, where they like lean too much into the drama of it to grow in popularity. But at the same time, my podcast isn't growing. So I guess if you want to grow, that's the way to do it. You kind of have to be a dick. So
you just make like videos about Kyle Kulinski now?
maybe I'm going to grow by talking shit about Kyle Kulinski. But no, I'm being fair. His videos annoy me, but at the same time, I guess he's doing a good job. But let's see what he has to say here. People are obsessing over the fact that Joe Rogan went to church. So let's see what he has to say.
How dare he?
So one of the things about Joe Rogan that made him such a powerhouse is that people seem to like his childlike curiosity. And I do mean that descriptor in the most positive way possible. And I felt this too, being on his show 5-6 times, however many I was on it, that he does, like, he really is inquisitive. He always wants to go deeper. He has this curiosity on a plethora of issues where...
I'm going to pause and say that's initially what attracted me to his podcast too, was that Joe Rogan was... It's funny, people always be like, he's a fucking idiot. And I'm like, he's asking good questions. Like, you can make the argument that who is he qualified to talk about this stuff, but the thing is, he's not. He's asking good questions, and he's bringing on qualified people who could answer those questions. I think that's what people tend to miss. Yeah. But anyways, carry
on. He wants to understand them, right? And so that was one of the things that made his show big in the first place. But what's happened in recent years is he's functionally become the exact opposite kind of person. He is no longer curious. He is no longer interested. Any guest he has on...
Okay, so to his point, and I still love Joe Rogan, but to his point, this is where I would have to say I agree. I don't agree, but I will admit that sometimes I do get tired of the woke conversation on the Joe Rogan podcast. Like, when I first started listening to it, I was into the Duncan Trussell stuff and the neuroscience stuff, and like that type of stuff, Andrew Huberman and whatnot. And I do feel like over time it has leaned more into the woke conversation. And it's not that I don't agree with the woke conversation and I don't value it. I learned a lot about gaining a bigger perspective of politics by hearing his side of the story. But at the same time, I'm like tired of it. I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah, it's about the same. I think, the woke shit pushed so hard though.
Yeah.
That it leaves me unsurprised.
Yeah.
That it was at this point. So I feel like once that starts to wane, as it is waning, everyone sees it and feels it. That it's like, okay, everyone's like, we're tired of this. Check. We're all tired of this bullshit.
Yeah.
It's gonna, I bet, within the next year.
Yeah, I want to give his podcast another chance again. I kind of stepped away from it for those reasons. And I also think, to his defense, there was an election. So obviously that was like a big on the forefront of a lot of his conversations.
Also those motherfuckers came after him directly. I would have the same FU energy.
Yeah.
Like they really just came after him as if he was...
And that's what a lot of people fail to admit. Like, people like Kyle Kulinski, when they're talking about this, they're like, Joe Rogan's become this and that. It's like, yeah, but you fail to mention the fact that the left really tried to take him down.
During COVID, these motherfuckers, they lied even after he had people
Yeah.
from CNN who lied on him, Sanjay Gupta.
Yeah.
All sorts of people like lied on him, and they're trying to ruin the man. They're not
Yeah.
saying, "Oh, we just don't like you." No, they actually expended energy trying to ruin him. So
Yeah.
I just got reminded of that
Yeah.
because he handled it with such grace.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So actually, it's his show. I think he gets to bitch as much as he wants about woke stuff, but like I was saying, I think it'll wane eventually.
Okay, let's hear what he has to say about the church thing.
He goes right back to his standard rants about the left being authoritarian, wokeness being bad, COVID conspiracy theories being correct, Donald Trump triggering the liberals and ha ha he he, isn't that funny, isn't that awesome? He's like a comedian, bro. Comedian brains are just different, man. We're just different breeds, bro. It's all the same conversations recycled over and over and over. And fundamentally, he has on a bunch of right-wing bullshitters. He himself has become a right-wing bullshitter. He invited Trump on and gave him a hot stone massage and then endorsed him afterwards. I know now he's trying to back away from this label of being MAGA, but there is no escaping it. You had him on. You didn't ask tough questions. You humanized him. You endorsed him. You went to the fucking inauguration. So it is.
All of that is true. He did have him on. But I think what he's also failing to admit is that he also invited on Kamala Harris and she refused to come on. So that's the big part that people are missing.
Yep.
Yes, everything he said is true. He did invite him on. The hot stone massage thing actually did make me chuckle. That was really funny. He did humanize him. All that's true. He also was willing to do the same for Kamala Harris. He also he had mentioned multiple times that he wanted to get to know her on a human level and not even ask her political questions at all. He's like, I just want to see what she's like as a person.
Yeah.
I just want to talk to her as a human being and see what she's like underneath the politician. And she failed. She didn't do it. So.
Yeah.
This is what it is. This is who you are now. So he lost that childlike curiosity. And boy, oh boy, do I have just a great example of this here for you. This is new. Now, I have to shout out, I believe it was the guys on the Vanguard, Zach and Gavin. They called this before it happened. They said, I think there's going to be like a Christian arc coming from Joe Rogan, because that's the trajectory he's on. You know, he went from like hippie adjacent pot smoking liberal, and then he evolved into the enlightened centrist role, and then he evolved further into just standard right-wing MAGA guy. And if you're continuing on that trajectory, where do you end up? Well, one of the things you can embrace is...
I would say no, he didn't become standard MAGA guy, because from what I see on the times I've listened to his podcast post-election, he's still willing to stand up for stuff that he doesn't agree with. Like, I remember he stood up for the situation with, and maybe I'm not waiting long enough. Maybe he's going to get to that point where he's saying Joe Rogan's trying to steer away from that now. But I do remember Joe Rogan, there was a deportation of a particular, what was it, a hairdresser or a barber or something like that. And I remember Joe Rogan speaking up about that and being like, this isn't cool. I don't agree with this. So I don't agree with him I don't agree with Kyle Kulinski that Joe Rogan is just completely
full
taken
MAGA.
over. Yeah, I don't think he's full MAGA.
Oh, no.
As a matter of fact, I think he still has a lot of the same liberal views. He just lost trust in the left. You know? But
fundamentalist Christianity, right? Because he's attracted now a mostly right-wing audience. So before I show you what's happening now, look at how he used to talk about these issues. For the longest time, he would always say, like, I'm an agnostic. I don't know. I don't really believe in God. I don't really believe in religion. I'm agnostic. I'm humble. I don't know about the mysteries of the universe. It was his, like, default common sense perspective, right? And he used to say stuff like this. Here we go. This is from when he was talking to Richard Dawkins, probably the world's most famous atheist. This is from about 5 years ago.
One of the things that I really enjoyed about your book was when you explained to people that everyone who practices a religion is an atheist. You're just an atheist in regards to Zeus or Apollo.
Or the 999 other gods.
Yes,
right.
and that's a home run with this argument.
Yes.
Because
some of us just go one god further.
Yes,
Yeah.
but that really is a home run, because this concept of, me and my friends jokingly would always say praise Odin when anything would happen that was pretty good or cool.
Yes.
We say praise Odin, and I started doing it online, and people really got into saying praise Odin about certain things.
I rather like that, yes.
Some people got mad at me. They actually got mad that you are mocking Christianity by saying praise Odin.
Of course you are. Why not?
I wasn't even really. I was just having fun.
Yes.
I was having fun because Odin seemed like a cool god. It was the vast number of different religions. The incredible number. How many actual religions are there?
Thousands.
Thousands.
Yes, I forget how many thousand.
And many of them share similar belief systems. It's just amazing that concept is alien to people. When I was a boy, I was raised Catholic, and I had an aunt who was Jewish, and my uncle married my aunt, and he had to convert to Judaism. And it was like a big deal in the family. Everybody would talk about it. And there was no anger. Everybody loved my aunt. She's a great lady. But it was just strange that he was converting to this other religion. I remember I was 5 years old when this was going on, and I was like, wait. What do you mean another religion?
Yes, quite.
I was like, what's going on?
Yes.
And they were like, oh, she's Jewish. I go, what? What does that mean? What do you mean she's Jewish?
Yes.
And they had to explain it to me.
Yes.
I go, okay, but she believes in God. Like, yeah, they believe in God. Okay, so why is it a different thing? Well, they believe Jesus was a different kind of a thing. They don't necessarily believe he was the guy that we think he was. It's just when you first hear that. That was probably put the first seeds of doubt in my head when I was a young boy. When I was like, wait, well, there's more than one. Like I'll never forget that moment, because we're all sitting around the dinner table, and I was just a little kid, and I'm thinking, what do you mean? There's another one?
So that's how he used to talk about it. This clip goes on, but that's how he used to talk about it. Just like a sort of default atheism or agnosticism where he questions everything because he's curious, and he's talking about how the stories don't add up, they really don't make any sense, these seem like ancient myths. Very clearly, he's anti-theist here. In other words, he doesn't think any particular religion is true. And as I always say, anti-theism in the sense that you don't believe all these different religions are true or one of them is true, that is like the most logical perspective. I can totally understand somebody who might disagree with me and believe in God or just believe in something beyond them. Like, I totally get that. That I can level with. But I do not, by any stretch of the imagination, I cannot perceive of somebody signing up for one particular religion among 4,000 or more. Why? Because, like, you were raised with that from your mom and dad, so you happen to be correct. You happen to be the one that's right out of the thousands of all of them throughout history.
I'm going to pause. Do you have anything to say about the point he just made? What do you think about that? Do you think it makes sense if there's so many different religions? Does it make sense to subscribe to one particular religious thought?
It's strange that he... How do I say this? I get where he's coming from, but it's not a useful argument. He used to be anti-theist. Okay. And then now he sees utility in the Christian religion. Okay.
Now I want to even see what he kind of lingered on this point too long. I want to see where he's even getting that. What does Joe Rogan actually do now? He went to church. Like, I want to see, does he actually have footage of Joe Rogan even saying that he's a Christian now? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
let's get to that.
Yeah.
It just seems so arrogant to me and like really deeply intellectually incurious, right? And so he's got this default anti-theistic perspective, but as you all know, as time has gone by, he likes inviting on right-wing guest after right-wing guest after right-wing guest. It doesn't matter what field. They could be MMA, they could be a comedian, they could be a pundit, they could be an actor, but it's like just a constant flow of right-wing guests. And so when you're in the environment of everybody around you believes the same stuff and they say the same things and they're all Trump supporters, you saw him change over time. And now we get stuff like this. Take note
here we go.
of how different this sounds. Ready? Here we go.
Well, space is the ultimate who the fuck knows, because we can only see so far. We see so far, but even so far is only so far.
Well, and then they're saying like it's always expanding, which that can't be true, because like what is it expanding into? If space is space, you know, if they're like, oh, it's like blowing up a balloon where everything's okay, but you're blowing up a balloon in a room,
right?
So what's the room that you're blowing the balloon into? And then that's in a bigger room, and then that's in this.
And then there's the concept that it's actually finite. It's not infinite, and it's some sort of donut shape. It like goes back around eventually.
But then who made all that?
Right.
Like, is there a God? Did God make this?
Or is God the universe?
Yeah, but then who made God? And then that bothers me.
Why would that bother you? By the way, I think this guy's a Christian. He's had a bunch of like weird Christian apologetics people on lately.
So far, he's not saying anything that's not open-minded yet. Like he hasn't. I'm not buying it that he's this like right-wing Christian now. I don't know. Let's keep hearing if he actually brings up anything else.
That to me, that's the trump card, no pun intended, of people. Oh, the world is so complex, so you needed a God to create it because the complexity is too much for it to just happen naturally. That's the argument. But you just got to go one step further and say, okay, well, who created that God? Because obviously that God, by definition, would be more complex than the world and the universe and everything in it, because they had the ability to create the world and the universe and everything in it. So they have to be even more complex. So then by your own logic, who was the super God that created the God? And then again, who was the super God who created the super God who created the God who created us? The logic falls apart. And notice, there's no attempt to even react to it. He's just like, oh, I hate that. Well, I don't care if you hate it. It's logically sound and it makes sense to me. Are you even going to try to rebut it? Or are you just going to, you believe it when the atheists say that, bro?
Not a thing that we think that like because we were born and we die, that we have these biological limitations that we attach to the universe itself.
That's fair.
Right.
That we see things as being built and destroyed.
That there's always been something. Well, wouldn't it be crazier if there wasn't something at one point in time?
Yeah.
That seems even crazier. Then there always has been something. Because if it's just something, if it's just the nature of everything, there is always something, right?
Right.
It couldn't be nothing and then all of a sudden everything. That seems
because what started that, what kicked that off,
exactly.
What snapped its fingers, like
that's McKenna's great line. Terrence McKenna had a great line about the difference between science and religion. Is that science only asks you for one miracle. I want you to believe in one miracle, the Big Bang.
Yeah. That's a good one.
It's a great line. Yeah. It's because it really is true.
Yes.
And it's funny because people would be incredulous about the resurrection of Jesus Christ, but yet they're convinced that the entire universe was smaller than the head of a pin, and for no reason than anybody's adequately explained to me. That makes sense.
Yeah. No.
Instantaneously became everything.
He's getting close. He's getting close to just doing the full Christian bit here. So now he's comparing the Big Bang to the resurrection of Jesus, and he's trying to make it seem like, well, obviously the Big Bang is Big Bang.
I think he's really trying to get something that isn't there. Like, I don't know what you think about that. Like, I don't think anything, I was like ready and willing to listen with open ears of the point he was trying to make. I don't think anything he's saying is pointing out that Joe Rogan is suddenly this far right-wing Christian MAGA guy. I don't know what you think about any of that.
Yeah, well, I get, importantly, outside of the context of this clip, I watch his show. You know what I mean? I've seen him. Yeah, I've clearly seen him talking about Christianity more often. But the thing is, it reminds me of myself where it's like, this seems more appealing and I can see why people do it over the years.
Yeah.
But obviously, whether fundamentalist or not, like, it's weird the labels that are thrown on it, because the question remains, who cares?
Yeah.
And I mean that. I want someone to explain to me why. Who cares and why? He's comparing what is the Big Bang coming from the point of a pin and then the resurrection of Jesus. I'm like, yeah, they are two oddly absurd things, and I'm interested in both of them. Yeah. Can we just talk about it?
Yeah.
I don't know. Are they competing?
Who's to say that his I think the point Kyle Kulinski is trying to make is that he was taken over by this MAGA thought, and now he's becoming the typical right-wing Christian and fitting in this box when he used to be open-minded. But I actually think it's the other way around. I think over time he's opening his mind more, because for somebody to be truly open-minded, you would be willing to, obviously this has its limitations too, and it can get you in trouble as well. But I feel like somebody who's truly open-minded would be willing to understand the perspective of anything, whether or not they agree with it. But someone who is truly open-minded might even sit and say, let me try to understand flat earthers. Not before people think I'm crazy, not saying like to believe in the flat earth theory, but to say, hey, let me actually try to just study what these people think, just so I can understand what the hell their thought process is.
Yeah.
So who's to say that Joe Rogan's mind isn't actually opening more rather than going down a particular line of thinking and closing off to this particular line of thinking? Because he's not saying that, Jesus was the answer. He's just saying, hey, wait a second. Maybe I was wrong in the past. And maybe, because in the past, I have seen Joe Rogan say things like, religion is stupid. Like I have seen him say stuff like that in his younger days, like maybe 6 years ago. Who's to say now? He's not necessarily saying here that I'm team Jesus now. He's just saying, wait a second, this is the same thing in a different form. Religion and science is the same thing in a different form. And he even said earlier, what if God is just the universe? I think what he's basically saying, which I fucking agree wholeheartedly, because I use the words God and universe interchangeably all the time, because I pray and I don't know what the fuck I'm praying to, because I'm not a Catholic, I'm not a Christian. So I never know what I'm praying to. So sometimes in my prayers, I'll be like, hey, God or the universe, whatever the fuck you are. I think that these religious and scientific words are just, at the end of the day, they're all just words and concepts for that which we don't completely understand. And that's why you have so many different interpretations of this religion, that religion. No, I don't think anyone could possibly get it right. I don't think anybody could possibly get it 100% correct. And I do agree that it doesn't make sense to choose one single religion, but it doesn't hurt to understand different religions. So I just don't think that by opening your mind to understanding or reading about a religion, like, okay, I've read the Bible, because not the whole Bible, that's huge, but I read Genesis, and why the fuck not? It's the foundation. Like, so why wouldn't you want to understand a book that's the foundation of so many things that we do in our everyday life? Because it's such a big part of history. Why the fuck I'm not saying that I believe in things in the Bible. I'm not saying that. I'm saying, why, if you were a curious person, why wouldn't you want to fucking read it so you can understand how things came to be today? You know what I mean? I don't know if anything I'm making is any sense. So no,
it does. Yeah. And you were making me think, especially with it's like they're all just trying to describe the things we don't understand, right?
Yeah.
It makes me think of math. And it makes me think of religion. So math with science, religion having to do with this, like, how do I approach the world? And I think the last conversation we were having, I was like, and I really do believe it. It's like religion is something you superimpose over the reality you live in, and you live by it. And generally, it helps you with life in certain ways, or sometimes depending on the religion, some things go sideways. Anyway, but and there's even older versions of it in each. You look at Tiamat from old accounts of religion. In that book I'm reading, A History of God, and a lot of those legends and things and myths inform modern religions, and they all share the same stories. And then you have math. You have things like the abacus, where you would do math on, and it's like, why would we use that now? We have fucking calculators, right? And it's interesting, you see these things grow, but they're aiming at doing the same thing. Math aiming to calculate something, from the abacus to the calculator, Tiamat, these old myths and legends, all evolving all the way up through time. But it's interesting. I'm like, I don't think necessarily these things have to compete directly with each other. It's interesting, because I used to laugh at Christian scientists and all sorts of things when I was younger, and I was in my Richard Dawkins phase. With his book, The God Delusion. Good book still. Good book still. I might not agree with him, but I can see where he's coming from, because he makes a lot of good points. Also, Richard Dawkins is much more well-read than most Christians I know. But it's just like, no, these things where everybody's searching for the same thing. And I haven't found anyone yet, whether they are a scientist or whether they are a Christian or religious person in general, who's been able to say and prove this is exactly what's going on. So until that happens, things like this, it's superfluous to me. I'm just like, okay. I think, and I don't hate Kyle Kulinski. I'm like, do your thing. It's just strange that you're losing sleep at night over a comedian, pot smoking podcaster who decided that there's, I don't know, some sensibility in Christianity. What?
So I think the reason why he's going so hard on that, and like you said, quote unquote, losing sleep at night, my suspicion about that is that during this past election, there was a lot of talk amongst the left-wing folk that we need the liberal Joe Rogan.
That was funny. Did you see the guy they tried to use for it? That little fucking shrimpy motherfucker.
Yeah. So I think while I am also irritated with it, I think it's a strategy. Mm-hmm. He's playing a game. I think Kyle Kulinski, and I'm not, by the way, if this ever gets back to him, because you never know, I'm not even saying I'm hating the game. I'm like, hey, one of the things I'm reading now, 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene, and I'm opening my mind up to the fact that as much as we want to criticize power, you can't avoid playing power games. It's part of life. I think what Kyle Kulinski is doing is he's seeing that opening for I'm not saying he himself is trying to be the liberal Joe Rogan, but he's seeing an opening for, wait a second, left of center and right wing podcasters kind of had and then this is going to go to a whole nother clip we're going to see later, where some of them even call it the new establishment, which is a far stretch. I'm not calling it the new establishment, but they did have a little bit of a leg up in the election because they were willing to talk so openly on their podcasts, and people are getting tired of hearing like corporate media and stuff like that. So I think a lot of left wing private media production, YouTube channels, etc., are seeing that opportunity of, by next election in 4 years, we need more voices like this. So while I'm annoyed by him, I see what he's doing. He's playing the strategy of, there's an opportunity here and I'm fucking going for it. And the only way he's going to go for it and get there is to go hard. Now, I'm not saying he's going to be the quote, you can't make the left-wing Joe Rogan. There already was a left-wing Joe Rogan until he got scared into the other direction. I'm not saying that, but what I'm saying is, I guess what he's doing is smart. I'm going to say what Kyle Kulinski is doing is smart. He's playing a fucking game here, and he's going hard and he's going heavy, and he's gonna cut down a lot of the things that he hears. But with that being said, I do think people listening should understand that there's a bigger picture to it, and he is exaggerating a lot of this.
Do you think it'll work?
Good question. I'm inclined to say yes at first, but then actually when I think about it, maybe not.
Why?
Because I don't think people are dumb. I mean, I think there's a lot of dumb people, but I think for the most part, if anything, the fact that people are more inclined to listen to private media companies as opposed to corporate media companies shows that we're not as fucking dumb as people think we are. Like, we want answers and we want truth. So if somebody is running their mouth in a way that is designed to exaggerate, yes, there are going to be a lot of people who get sucked into that. But I think for the most part, I think I have a decent amount of faith in the intelligence of people to think that they would read through it. What about you?
I tend to agree. I think, well, I should start with this, is that Joe Rogan is Joe Rogan not because he's brilliant or anything else. It's his sincerity. You don't get to that point without the sincerity, and that's why they resent him, is because he did that. You know he's doing it right because he's pissing people off just being himself and not looking back. So what? He still has liberal values, but he voted Republican and endorsed it this year. But Joe Rogan is still Joe Rogan, and people, I feel like that's overlooked. So if there is a left wing Joe Rogan, this is how I know I'm sincere too, is like, I'm not against that, because if they're just as sincere as him, it'll probably be someone like myself and like you who's like, I don't care about the label. I just care about the sincerity, the principles, and the consistency across those. Not that you can't change some things you believe, as he clearly does, which I encourage. It's like, if you're not changing and you're getting older and it's been 10 years, what the fuck are you doing? You know what I mean? So it's funny, the liberal Joe Rogan thing. I'm like, no, I don't think that's really a bad thing as long as that person is truly sincere. But if you're trying to push it through videos that criticize a man for seeing utility in Christianity, that's just silly. And to your point, no, people aren't dumb. I was thinking the same thing. Like, some people get nudged by it, but generally after people keep watching a thing, if they see it's rotten and disingenuous inside, they're going to move on, whether consciously or they're just going to stop watching it without thinking about it. Yeah.
It's funny. There is a little part of me that's inclined to say people are fucking dumb and will fall for anything. But no, I think what all people have in common is they have intuition. Like, I'm a very intuitive person, And sometimes I have to be careful not to become arrogant about that, because you get some people that are like, I'm spiritual, and it's like,
you mean like my crystal?
Like your crystal, or like, I mean, and I'm not hating on those people, because I would consider myself to be spiritually inclined because I have strong intuition. I have some friends who are that way, but a flaw I see in that thinking within myself is that in the past, especially when I was in my 20s and I realized I had good intuition, I thought it made me special. I thought it was like, oh, I have this spiritual gift. Everybody has it. Everybody has it. It's just that some people are trust it more than others. I've learned to trust my intuitions, and I don't completely trust all my intuitions. I still question myself a lot. But I think a lot of us all of us as human beings have a spirit. All of us we're all spiritual by nature because we all have a spirit. So I think we're all capable of receiving we're all these antennas capable of receiving information. And I think one thing that we all universally have is this ability to detect bullshit. Maybe some more than others. But what I'm saying, long story short, despite someone's intelligence, despite what college they went to, despite where they grew up, we're all fucking animals at the end of the day. And an animal can hear a sound. Like, you know what I mean? Like my cats can hear sound. One of my cats is smarter than the other, obviously. Like, I have one cat that's really smart, one cat that's kind of dumb. But at the end of the day, if a fire truck comes by, they both hear it. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm saying. Like, all human beings are animals in that way, that we can detect bullshit and read body language. And that's just a long-winded way to say I think people are smarter than we give them credit for when you take away the college degrees and whatnot, and you just raw human emotion and spirit. I think we all have that. You know, I don't know if that makes any sense.
No, it does. And I mean, that's basically where I'm at. That's like, I don't know. If anything, this election was an indication of that.
Yeah. Okay, let's go on. So we're going to move on from that clip. Okay, so the next clip we're going to go into, guys. Now, this is another one that I've only been seeing things in passing in the YouTube algorithm, and I haven't actually clicked on any of them. So this would be another kind of like raw reaction video. Apparently Elon Musk is doing ketamine. And hey guys, it's me, your host, Andrea Pranzatelli. This is a 2-part podcast episode. I will be releasing the second part of this episode 1 week from the release of the first part. If you're catching this podcast late, the second part of this episode might already be available. However, if I just released this episode, stay tuned next week for the second part of this episode. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please don't forget to hit subscribe. It is my dream to be a full-time podcaster, and every single subscriber helps me get closer to reaching my goal. And that's it. Have a good day, guys. Bye.